welcome to Season 3, Episode 11 of the SteamLUG Cast. We are recording on the 12th of June, 2015. My name is Tully42, the Hider, and with me is Cheese.
Hi.
Bean.
Hello.
And special guest Aaron.
Hey.
Welcome. So before we dive in, has anybody been playing anything interesting lately? Bean, what have you been up to?
I've been playing Assault Enter Cactus. It's still kind of my go-to. Here's 20 minutes to kill. Let's play something. I love that game. But Dataless No Escape. It's kind of just top-down Quake 3 without a jump mechanic. It's a lot of fun, but unfortunately there's nothing but bots to play. That game, I really wish that there were more people playing that one. Well, because I need something to kill me finally. Some Guns of Icarus online during the practice events we have, and then played some Blaze Rush. That it's fun. Blaze Rush is interesting. Play that, bit of a multiplayer with that. Every once in a while, toss out some Nimble Quest because Nimble Quest is fascinating to me. I like the idea that someone did something with the typical snake. Each segment of the snake is a different class, and the classes level up themselves, and there's a lot of ways in which it could be improved upon. But I kind of enjoy that. And then of course,
I haven't heard of it before.
Have you not heard of Nimble Quest?
No.
Oh yeah.
Looks cute.
Yeah, it is. It's and it's fun to play for a few minutes and then just go off and do something else. And then Ultratron. Thanks to your help, I was able to actually get my Logitech F310 controller working correctly.
I didn't do anything.
Well, okay. It wasn't really your direct assistance, but you gave me a nudge, and I looked back in the forums, and someone had a perfect config. It posted a couple months ago, and tossed that in there, and sure enough, now that game's playable again. Ultratron is another twin-stick shooter. I really love those. But it's like the other things in the Puppy Game series, where you take elements of games everybody's familiar with and kind of mash them together a bit. So alongside the twin-stick shooting and the bullet mayhem that's going on, you got, like, for example, fruit that are coming in. And if you collect them, they're worth progressively more.
Yeah.
Which is kind of borrowing from Pac-Man. Yeah.
So if there's anybody who's played Ultratron, and there was an update quite a while back that broke gamepad support for some people. If you're keen to try it, go to the forums, see if you can find a config for your gamepad. Maybe you'll be able to get it running.
Yeah, because after that update that you're referring to, the bigger issue I had was that if I had the controller plugged in when I started Ultratron, I couldn't deactivate it even within the menus. So that's been taken care of now. I've got a working config in there, so the game's a lot of fun. So, Cheese, what have you been playing?
Me? Hero gave me a copy of Outland, which we're probably going to mention later, and I gotta say I've been really enjoying that. Been playing a little bit of Ultratron, which I picked up when I picked it up ages ago, but I started playing it for the first time when we were discussing it the other day. Been playing a little bit of Blaze Rush. It's interesting kind of arcadey type feel for what's the name of the old game that it's kind of reminiscent of?
Micro Machines?
Micro Machines doesn't have the same kind of blowing stuff up thing going on though. But yeah, it's got that kind of, you zoomed out a fair way, and everything feels kind of small. But it's fun. We played a few multiplayer games, and by far I found that the Death Race mode was the most enjoyable. Yeah,
the Death Race is really exciting. It's because you've got the grinder behind you and just basically last man standing.
Yeah,
I like it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's cool. I've been playing a bunch of Massive Chalice. Not so much for the enjoyment of playing the game. I've been working on a fairly sizable piece of fan art and need to keep firing it up for references. But yeah, since release, I've played, it's been nearly 20 hours worth of that as well. I really like it. I assume you've been playing a little bit as well, Bean.
Yeah, I had. I actually, it's surprising because those kind of games like XCOM, for example, a lot of the turn-based strategy ones are just not. I don't know. I feel like I don't have the patience I used to, so not really attracted to those much. But there's something about Massive Chalice, and I think it's that mechanic of the fact this takes place over generations. and that you're somewhat responsible for the breeding of the future generations to figure out what kind of skills your soldiers are going to have. And it's just, I think that part of it draws me in more than the actual turn-based strategy segments of it.
I feel like I really enjoy both parts. Like, I like that I kind of like the lack of Overwatch and the lack of obvious cover points in the tactical combat. And I like the way that they force you to be thoughtful in a different way to XCOM. So in XCOM, you like, if you can't make a good move, you always just sit where you are and do Overwatch. Whereas that doesn't have the same kind of value as a default move in Massive Chalice. So I really enjoy the different style of thinking involved with that. But yeah, the genetic stuff's great. And it's like the kind of long view decisions that you need to make. I really enjoy those. And I love that regardless of your best efforts, everyone turns out to be some drunk, nearsighted peanuts who can't shoot anything.
Short, emaciated.
Yep. Puny. Ugh.
Gingers.
Just stick them all in the Sage Rights Guild. Don't let them make babies. So Telly, what about you? What have you been up to?
I've also been playing Guns of Icarus on the bi-weekly practice event. I recently discovered that Arkham Asylum runs rather well in wine on my system.
Oh, nice.
And that's it.
How are you finding that?
It runs quite well. As long as it's not loading textures, then it is running well enough for me to become immersed in the game.
It's all good. And Aaron, have you been having time to play anything recently?
Not a whole lot, but I can't remember the last things I played. Right after I got done with Shadow Warrior, I played through Hotline Miami 2. I really enjoyed that. Probably the most recent game I played, probably ended up playing more than I planned to play, was Titan Souls. I really like that game.
Yeah, cool. So before we dive onto the main content, we're gonna have a sort of more focused chat with Aaron here. Would you mind giving us a bit of backstory about yourself, your history, and where you've come from?
Sure. So I came on the scene, I guess, or started working around 2007. Before that, I went to one of these video game schools in Orlando, Florida. I went to Full Sail because they have those now, I guess. And that made things pretty easy because I don't really care for school that much, and they seem to mostly teach programming, and so that jived well with me. And then right after that, I went to AMI. And AMI was a bar game company, so touchscreen bar games. But the machines that they built were a version of Red Hat that we had custom for the hardware that we chose. And yeah, so do you want me to just keep talking about stuff, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, right there. So there is when I've always done native C, C++, and that's where I feel comfortable. And we made bar games. I started out being a game programmer, but then I realized that I don't really like dealing with designers too much, so I just kept choosing more and more engine-y type tasks to do. And that ended up that through that I ended up doing ports to the bar top touchscreen. So I did a handful of ports over there to our own Linux platform for a bunch of casual games. So Luxor, Chains, Little Shop of Treasures, if any of those ring a bell for you. So I helped support those.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a couple of those titles.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear they got moved to bar games.
Yeah, we struck up a couple deals with some big fish type games, and we were able to get their code and get it ported over. That was the most fun I had at that company. So I just kept ending up doing work like that because I seemed to have a knack for it. And
So what sort of systems did they run on?
everybody at the company developed with Linux. Some of us, it was personal preference, but I ran Ubuntu most of the time, just because that's what everybody else was using. So I didn't really have a preference at the time. It was the first time I actually used Linux was when I got the job. I just figured it out.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, it was either Ubuntu and then a bunch of other people who had Red Hat. They were just running on. And yeah, so I did that for a while, a couple of years. Then I wanted to move up. This was all in near Philadelphia, and I wanted to get up to the Boston area. So I just decided to move, and they kept me on as an offsite, which was really nice. And I spent a long time trying to find a job in Boston. and I ended up at Double Tap. And they were a really small company. They were the remnants of a company called Helix that did a lot of DS games for THQ. And they were mostly doing contract work for random clients. And, just so happens that some of that contract was port stuff. And a really huge coincidence is that they were actually taking a bunch of the bar games that I made while I was at AMI and putting them into this game for the DS called Touch Masters. So it was a collection of the AMI bar games packaged into a DS game. So I think that was one of the main reasons why they actually gave me consideration, is because on my resume it had the games that they were actually porting at the time.
It's funny, it's like the more work you do, the smaller the world ends up being.
Yeah, it worked out really well because I was having a hard time, honestly, finding a job up there. I think they were my 46th application to a game developer. For some reason, it was just really tough for me to find something. But most of the work I did there was console related, which I had a lot of fun with. So I was porting a lot of Windows code to console, or a lot of DS code. So they had a DS engine, and I had to get the DS engine working for Xbox 360, PS3, Wii, and Nintendo 3DS. And that was a lot of fun.
What sort of differences do you find that there are between those platforms?
There's a lot of differences. Like, everything is different. Because the hardware is so special, the APIs usually are generally custom suited for the hardware. If the platform is nice enough, they'll have a OpenGL implementation for you to just shove in, but it's usually not the path you want to choose if you want to get the best performance. Just to give you some bits there. And then, all the platform stuff like friends and handling unplugging controllers and all that other stuff. But then that company started doing web programming, so I got out of there.
Have a bias against web programming? I'm kidding. Move on.
Nah, I mean, I did it for 8 months for them, because that was what they had me doing.
Yeah, no, totally kidding.
I couldn't say I enjoyed it too much. So then I started looking immediately when that happened, and ended up at Turbine, where they didn't know where to put me for a while, which is really weird. I took the job because I thought they were going to do console work. That's what I got hired for. Little did I know that they kind of gave up on that idea by the time I started working there. So I was just kind of like working on the Wii U. I was porting the engine to Wii U for no end goal at all. They just, a month later, they were like, yeah, we're not doing console anymore. So I found stuff to do there. The biggest of that being porting Lotro and DDO to Mac. And that was probably the biggest port I've ever done, because it was an MMO. It was just a huge code base.
Yeah, I imagine that would be huge. There'd be a lot of stuff to work through. And it's like, did you have any what were you doing for quality assurance? Were they already supporting Mac for anything?
No. So this company had been Windows only, since Asheron's call. They hadn't ventured outside of Windows. So the code base was very Windows focused. So yeah, we were basically starting from scratch, and we had to port, millions of, I don't know if it was millions, but it was a lot of code. So I did that, and that was fun. It wasn't just me, though. It was me and like 2 or 3 other guys, but I handled the graphics part and the Windows part. And I'm sad to say that at the time, STL2 was not fully out yet, and I actually ended up using SFML, which I feel pretty bad about, because I ended up having to make a lot of changes to SFML to actually make it decent. Yeah, I knew.
Yeah. Go on, Chip. Flip it. You know you want to chime in.
Chime in, man.
If I just chime in here, all I'm going to do is just hiss at him.
Well, okay.
No, it's not true. But
I use Mojo Shader.
Because when did you port that? Because SDL2, even Humble didn't put that in production until like 2012, and that was Torchlight 1, I think, was the first title to use it.
Honestly, this was it 2011? It might have been 2010, 2011, something like that.
Yeah, it was not close. It took Valve to really push it forward.
There was a depot I could sync, but I didn't even bother.
Yeah, once Valve stepped in, that's when everyone at Humble was like, okay, maybe we should take this a little more seriously and actually help them. Because I think Edward was really pushing for that as well, which is what it was that, and I think a couple months later, Ryan shipped it in Dungeon Defenders. I don't know if either of them did anything before that with STL2. I think I was the last of the party.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, it seemed like I could have got it to work, but it's still in the earlier stages. 1.2 was definitely used a lot more, and that didn't seem as good as SFML at the time. So I just grabbed it, and most of it ended up being changed, but it did save me some time.
Yeah, 1.2 had a lot of, especially on Windows and Mac OS, it was like if you changed the video mode, your GL context was just destroyed, and you just had to live with it. So
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so we did that. I ended up using Mojo Shader though, and that helped a lot because we had a ton of shaders. We did shader generation, and I don't need to get into too many details, but yeah, I ported it, and it was a lot of work. So we did that, and then I worked on the engine team. Basically, I became a graphics engineer over there as my title, but I basically did whatever client side. So that was Turbine. I worked on Infinite Crisis. I worked on the engine for that a lot, graphics wise and stuff like that. But then, you know, I've been wanting to start my own business for a long time, and looking at the landscape and my skill set, I just, you know, it just came naturally. Like, okay, most of what I've done is porting. Seems like there's a need for porting. Okay, it looks like people will probably pay me. I actually met John Graham, I think 2012 at PAX East, and I talked to him, and he told me to, you know, talk to Edward, and I talked to Edward, and then I did Horde. That was my intro project for Humble Bundle, and then I was like, wow, okay, so I get paid for this, so let's do it, and I quit once I hit my 2 years there, so I could get my 401k vesting, and then I got out, and then here we are a year later. Knockout Games, and I've had a great time porting all these games.
That's awesome. And so you're also involved with the IGDA in Boston for a little while?
Yeah, when I was up there, I decided to get involved. Well, I went to the IGDA meetings all the time just because I liked the people that went there, and they became friends of mine. And so I went so much, and they had elections, and I figured whatever. I'm there all the time. I might as well help out with organizing the meetings and stuff and doing the website. So yeah, I did that for about 2 or so years, but I'm not doing it anymore because I moved to Florida last year to cut costs because, well, I did have a good year. Boston is very expensive, and I ended up, I think, losing some money, but you know, that's what credit cards are for. So I made it through and paid my taxes, and I'm alive still. And Florida's way cheaper, so it's gonna help a lot.
So, moving on to the porting stuff, you mentioned Horde. What kind of an experience was that? Because that was the first title you ported to Linux? I mean, it's outside of the early stuff?
Yeah, Horde was the first thing that I did on my own, and that was actually, you know, it was a very good intro project, and Edward knew that, I think, when he gave it to me. It already had a Mac port, so all I had to do was Linux, and it was easy for me to do, and I got it done pretty quickly. To be honest, I kind of want to go back to it and update it with all my latest port stuff, but I don't see the traffic in the forums or people asking for it, so I haven't done it.
Well, I guess that begs the question then, like, what's missing from it that it would benefit from? Because it seems pretty solid as it is.
Yeah, and that's what I don't know. I just want to throw my new stuff in there, have better gamepad. I think I probably have better gamepad support now, and a couple other little things, and update the SDL version of it.
That could be a nice thing to coincide with the Steam Machine launches.
But yeah, like, I got people paying me to do other stuff right now, so I focus on that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, you know, it's only right to focus on those that are paying me for their attention.
Well, now we know how to get to your heart.
Yeah, but I at the same time, I don't like to abandon ports. So if I get, you know, I still answer support for ports that I'm not getting paid for, just because, you know, if someone really wants to play one of the games, I want to help them out. If it's easy, I'll at least look into the issue for them.
Well, you know, I'm kind of glad you brought that up because that's a question that comes up on the cast sometimes when we talk about, you know, people porting to Linux when you know, bugs are discovered. You know, who does do that support for it long term after it's been done? Does it go, you know, should that go back to the original publisher or developer?
On paper, it's supposed to go to them, and then they need to talk to me. But I'm watching all the Steam forums, so if something comes up there, I see it, and, you know, I don't want people, because I mean, that's my that's my resume. Someone can go look at the Steam forums and see how I'm, working with the community and making fixes and stuff. And I don't want them to see like everyone complaining about it not working.
Fair enough.
It's a tricky proposition, though. I mean, like at a point, it's got to become unsustainable.
Yeah, I do it. I don't do it in an unsustainable manner. Like I run my own business, so I can make these calls, which is really awesome. That's why I did this, so I can have freedom. And if it ever gets to the point where I don't have time to do it, I'm not gonna have time to do it. I'm not gonna sacrifice my current development for maintaining older games. But if I have a few minutes, I'll look into it. And most of the time, the issues are really simple, and it takes me 5-10 minutes to address them.
That's cool. And I guess if you've done a good job, then hopefully it's less work.
Oh yeah, and I think I can't name the specific instances, but there's been times where like I'll get a support issue for an older game, and I'll see the issue, and I'm like, oh well, I have this issue in all my other ports, so I end up fixing it for current development ports too. So that's kind of how I justify the time. Like if it's an issue in my stuff, like it benefits the current project, so I kind of like roll it into that kind of like budget thing.
Oh, nice. So after Horde, what was the next title you worked on?
Horde. I have to reference my websites.
So the website, the title is like coming soon MF.
I'm never gonna get to it.
Well, I mean,
I have a site, but it's like I haven't had time to review it and like publish it and stuff.
well, I'm actually more curious. Like, is MF an upcoming title?
Oh, where do you see that? Sorry.
The actual title of the page.
Oh, that's the website, man. I said the website is coming soon.
I think I copied and pasted an HTML template, and it might have been just left over in there.
Very nice.
Nice.
I definitely didn't make the little guy with the shovel or anything. Like this was a coming soon template that I just took from a free thing.
Very nice.
And then I added raw text to it with links to my stuff.
Very nice.
So after that, so I did Snapshot a while ago, actually. I didn't mention that, but I worked on the Snapshot. It wasn't a port, but I helped them with the Windows release. I did a lot of optimization and engine work for them.
Yeah, cool.
And that kind of gave me a taste of the community and stuff. And I was like, wow, I want to get back into this community of indie developers and stuff. But then I had a kid.
It's kind of sad that Snapshot doesn't quite work on Linux. It's
I know, and it's one of my things that I want to do. Like, if I ever get some free time, I was hoping to do it this year sometime. Is actually good because I didn't do those ports, and I kind of want to go to that code base and do them myself.
Yeah, well, if you get the opportunity, I'd love to finish the game.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna. It's on there. Like it's the thing that I want to do. Like I think originally I planned on just leaving a couple months open this year to just do whatever I want. But I just I'm buying a house now, so I don't know if that'll happen. But yeah, definitely like that's the kind of stuff, and that's why I quit my job so I could do whatever I want. Like I want to help. I like these games. I get attached to them, and I want to make them playable. But yeah, after Horde, I did Democracy 3 for the iPad. And that was an iPad. That's the only iOS port I've done, but that was the next one. That was fun.
As what was involved with that compared to some of the other platforms you've worked on?
Well, that one had already been ported to Mac and Linux by, I believe Edward did it.
Yeah, Edward did it.
And, okay. Yeah, I get confused because I know your name gets mixed in there somewhere. Oh, no,
I came in for GSB2, which is mostly Edward's code, and a few things thrown out, like a lot of your ES2 stuff for Democracy 3 got thrown out in exchange for Mojo Shader because both games actually use the effects framework. So.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, I never even saw that stuff because when I showed up, Edward had already GLSL'd it and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess it was just Edward, and I actually started I think La Mulana was actually my second port that I started, but it just went into like hibernation mode for a year. Now that I'm thinking about it, and that was actually a very interesting port because it was a Japanese code base.
I was just curious. Do you speak Japanese? I don't. I'll clarify that first.
I do not speak Japanese.
Yeah, so I was just trying to imagine myself having to go through a Japanese code base. I can't imagine if I was having to do it to actually bring a product to other people. Mad respect.
Well,
Do you feel that was reflected in the code base, like beyond comments?
Oh yeah. So I mean, like variable names and stuff were pretty like there would be some European names for things, but most of the time it would be just a few letters, so it was almost kind of like assembly-ish, just because it's the code is in English, so that's good for me because then I can work on it. But yeah, all the comments were Japanese, and that's fine. Just weird other issues like having to convert all the source files to UTF-8 from the other encoding, the Microsoft Japanese encoding that is default for those systems.
Oh yeah.
I forget the code page. I think it's CP96 or something. I had to convert all of them. And that was the fun part of it. Because I didn't really have an idea of what to do first, so I just changed my Windows machine to be of the Japanese locale, and then stuff started compiling. Because if you try to compile it and it's in that encoding, it just fails all over the place because it interprets characters as like commas and stuff, and like it ends up breaking the code. So that was fun, and then dealing with the odd code styles. But besides that, it was a pretty easy port because it's a pretty simple game.
It's a hard game.
Well, the code's simple. And I actually just did some work on it recently. I'm still making tweaks to it because they're pretty good at reviewing their own game, and they find a little nitpicky stuff for me to fix.
It's kind of cool that they're putting effort into it to identify stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It sucks the turnaround time because the devs don't actually speak English, so it has to get translated each way.
Ah, no.
And that was fun. That was my second one, and then I did Democracy 3, and then I somehow ended up working on Braid, which was really awesome.
So Braid had already been ported previously by Ryan
Yes.
Gordon, who we had on in a previous show.
Yeah, Ryan did all the...
But he hadn't had a chance to work on it for a while, hey?
Yeah, Ryan did most of the work for me. Actually, the majority of my work was on the Windows version of the game, getting it work on Windows 8 and 8.1. But yeah, I ended up working on that because I saw him tweet that he was looking for someone to help him with porting or something. And then I had a friend that had his email that asked him, and then we ended up linking up. And so that was really cool. And I just actually redid the DRM free installers for it like today. And I'm going to push those up to Humble Bundle because they're having that all-star bundle right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool to see.
So yeah, I have an ongoing deal with him, so I just maintain it and do support whenever that pops up and stuff, which is nice.
And you migrated it to SDL2 as well, right?
Yeah, it was 1.2 when I got to it, and I just upgraded to 2.0 and just plugged in my port stuff and got it all upgraded, and so things got a little bit more stable. And then after that, or almost at the same time, I think, I did Outland. Outland was a big job. That was a console game. It'd never been on PC before, so I did the Windows, Mac, and Linux versions of that game, as well as the Steam integration and everything. And that was like, yeah.
I don't know anything about its innards, but I really like the game itself.
Oh yeah, I didn't play it before I got the job, but I fell in love with it. I ended up playing it a lot. It's a pretty good game, and yeah, I actually employed a couple of subcontractors to help out with that, but most of it ended up being me. But it gave, the budget for that game was high enough that I could experiment with subcontractors, which had mixed results, but it ended up saving me time, so I can't really complain. But yeah, it was a lot of work.
Like I said, it's the main thing.
So was the use of the effects framework your fault then, or was that inherited from the console version? Because I actually have to ask that.
Oh yeah, that's right, and that's how me and Flibbit worked together a little bit. So that came from their Windows development version of the game, as well as the Xbox version of the game used the effects file. So that was the main motivation to get that working with the Mojo shader.
Yeah, because I think at the exact same time I was working on that for FNA, and I think I brought it up, and then I ended up just making a thread with you, me, and Ryan, and then basically over the next month and a half, I basically just carved out and reverse engineered the entire format. And I don't know, because I had nothing else better to do, and you probably had other projects, which your list is a little bit bigger than mine, for the end of 2014.
Yeah, I was pretty busy. I think I was doing like 2 or 3 things in line. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. So I just did the Mojo shader changes that were required specifically for Outland, but then Flipit went and did an exhaustive upgrade to it so that it would run everything in FNA, right?
Yeah, it's basically a complete rewrite that has 95% of the binary format figured out and does all the shaders and does all the commit changes. Basically recreates the API entirely. So what FNA does is exactly what XNA does.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I literally I put in asserts for anything new that I ran into when I tested all the shaders and just implemented the missing parts.
Yeah, there's still a lot of asserts in there.
Yeah. But yeah, that was fun. That was cool too to figure out. I didn't do as much as Flipit did, but it was fun figuring out the bytecode format and stuff that hadn't been figured out yet by Ryan. And then actually seeing it all show up and be just like the DirectX version, which was awesome. But yeah, that was fun, and that was a good prep for Shadow Warrior, which was a ton more work. But I didn't do that till later. So after Outland was done, actually see Super Splatters is another example of a game that hibernated for a while. I did Super Splatters earlier in 2014, around the same time as La Mulana, and that was just the Linux port because Neve, the developer for that, did the Mac port on his own, and he already used SDL2, so that was pretty easy because he already had SDL2 in place and everything.
Nice.
So that was like, I think it was less than a month, and they were like, "Well, you got it done so quick." I'm like, "Well, because you had it ready for me to do it." So that was super easy. And then Shadow Warrior was like, I spent way too much time on Shadow Warrior.
And you weren't the only one that worked on it. Well, I was just saying he wasn't even the only one that worked on it, because as he's sort of suggesting with his schedule is that we tend to work on a bunch of titles at once, and then they sort of become inert after a while. Sometimes because the bigger ones totally eclipse it, and Shadow Warrior is one of those gigantic titles that has a lot of people's hands in it. I wasn't one of them, but talking with people internally at Humble, it's one of those titles where it's like, yeah, we got this one title. He's working on it now. He's working on it now. But I hear that code base is very lovely.
Yes, that's probably the best code base that I've run into. I underestimated how much needed to be implemented by it because I was like, wow, it looks so good in here. Like, oh, this will be so easy because it's like the best code. But it's a fully featured rendering. Basically it's a AAA rendering engine with a fully featured set of things that it does. And so it just took a lot of time to implement everything for OpenGL. But yeah, no, Edward actually started that port out, and he got it all compiling, and then I took it from there. Once he got it all compiling, I did the OpenGL port and a bunch of the other random stuff for Mac and Linux, and I did some slight subcontracting on it, but it was maybe like 1 to 5% of the job was done by subcontracting, because at that point I was just like, I want to do this myself. So, but yeah, that was intense.
So was that an in-house engine that they used for that?
Yeah, it's their own engine that they used. I think they've used it since I forget what the game's called, but their first title. It's like Cold something.
I believe it was called. It was like a
Hard Reset.
Hard Reset, yeah.
Yeah, Hard Reset.
Oh, Hard Reset was great.
They're from they came from People Can Fly, who did like Painkiller, and apparently, I guess from that and experience with Unreal, those guys just had experience writing engines that were just gorgeous. So,
oh yeah, they knew what they were doing with this thing. I see a lot of influence from id Tech and stuff like that in there, which I really liked because I'm a big fan of the id Tech engines. But yeah, it was a great port. I got to become very familiar with the OpenGL 3.x feature set, which is equivalent to the DX10 feature set, which is all they were using. So that was a lot of fun, and that was the most recent one that released, along with that bundle, which had those 2 other games in it that went into hibernation. And then I had like the most insane support month or 2.
So as far as stuff that you're working on at the moment, you've got Quadrilateral Cowboy and something else that's just been announced, if I remember right.
Yeah, I'll touch on Quad real quick. Yeah, that's another one that I did in 2014. that is in basically like it's ported. He just has to finish the game, and then when he's done, I'll provide support.
Yeah, it's great to see a native version of it coming to Linux. Really looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, and I was surprised that he was using the Doom 3 engine. I mean, so I saw it at a convention. I was like, oh my god, I love this game. I really want to be a part of it. And so I just talked to him, and it just so happened he was using idTech 4, the Doom 3 engine. And I just started working on it, and that was a lot of fun too. Because that's a
He's been using idTech stuff for a long time.
yeah, so it made a lot of sense. But yeah, idTech is a great engine, so I don't mind working on that one either. And the other stuff that I can talk about, which I just got cleared to talk about, is in September. I actually have 2 more games coming out, or sometime later this year. I know in September, Mighty Number 9 is coming out, and that's one of the next ones that I'm working on.
Nice.
And that is exclusive to this podcast, or this cast, sorry.
How'd you come across that one?
So that was recommended. So I did La Mulana, and I think the word got around. They must have said something to somebody, and then I ended up linking up with the Mighty Number 9 guys, or the people who represent them anyways, that can speak my language. And they were like, can you port Mighty Number 9? I'm like, yes, I'm a supporter of the Kickstarter, so I would like to port that.
Nice.
So it was just like a really awesome coincidence. And that's an Unreal Engine 3 game. So I'm just having all sorts of fun with that.
Yeah, it's funny. There've been a few crowdfunding campaigns that I've been a part of, or sorry, games that I've crowdfunded and then since gone on to help developers out with something here and there. It's kind of interesting to see the way that opportunities tend to expose themselves when people have the ability to get in contact with people while games still in development at an earlier stage and whatever.
Yeah, it was a really cool coincidence. And I've just been working on that one on and off since last year while they sort out, because that's another in development game. So it's like I don't want to go 100% into it because they're still changing things, but I'm getting enough done so that there's not a huge amount of stuff to done when they get down to the line. But yeah, stuff's.
Are they merging any of your changes upstream
To Unreal?
No, to their code base.
I think it's one way right now, but obviously I'm gonna let them have the code if they want it. But yeah, I just get code drops from them, and I just integrate it into my Git.
That's cool.
But that's that, and then the other one I'm working on, which I'm not sure when it's releasing actually, or if they've even announced anything, is Soma. That is by the people who did
Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Yeah.
The Penumbra series.
Right.
Very nice.
That was something Edward referenced me for, which was nice of him.
Yeah, because he'd done some of their previous stuff, right?
Oh yeah, so I don't expect that one to be hard at all since he's already gone through and touched that.
Oh, that's good to know that that the port of that is in someone's hands and will be on its way.
Yeah.
Do you know if that and Mighty Number 9 are likely to have a simultaneous Linux release?
I don't. My goal, obviously, with Mighty Number 9 is to have everything ready for them so that they can have it simultaneously. I don't think that they've committed to that, which I don't mind, but I feel confident it'll be ready in time. Same thing with Soma. Soma should be pretty quick, like I said, because Edward, touched it already, so I don't have to do a lot of the legwork that he's already done for me.
And you think Quadrilateral Cowboy is going to hit pretty close to the mark as well?
Oh yeah, whenever he's ready, like the game runs on both the platforms. I have a few little tasks that I'm going to do when it's closer to ship, but it should be able to do simultaneous as well.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's why.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's why I contacted him while it was still in development.
So something else you have listed on your site is a lightning talk you did, and I totally didn't pay attention to when it was, but at some point in the past.
August of 2014.
Thank you, Bean.
Yeah, that was a talk I did right before I left Boston.
Titled "Your Code Sucks." Deal with it. And it kind of feels like it sums up a lot of the kind of stuff that the porters I've talked to have had to deal with. What kind of response have you had to it?
I mean, I haven't. The response that I've got is all right, I think. But yeah, there's a lot of agreements. Like the code, yeah. I mean, I made that talk because I was so frustrated starting out, like everyone trying to preach making the best code and stuff. So I bought into it for a while, but then I got a job and saw the stuff that is out there is not perfect, and that's okay. And that's the main reason behind the talk. And I think a lot of people got that, at least that I talked to in person. And yet,
Oh, it's nice in that it highlights that it's easy to get caught up in the things that we consider are the I don't know, the things that make our craft elegant. When someone says, "Oh, that's elegant code," they what defines elegant code for someone who writes a lot of code? It's often not something that's really serviceable or understandable, or it's usually the things that you go, "Wow, that's tricky."
oh yeah, and I never saw something that someone considered elegant and actually worked with it and happened that way. Oh, sorry, I released the key. But yeah, whenever someone says elegant, my red flags go off. Like, oh, elegant, like I'm gonna have to deal with that later.
So still to this point, you haven't seen anything that you might consider elegant?
I mean, my opinion of elegant, if I'm gonna think of it as a positive term, would be, oh, it works and I never have to touch it. That's pretty elegant. But I think a lot of people use that word when they're like, oh, I did this thing, I made this system, and you add this weird looking line, and then it changes this system to do this new thing that is unintuitive, and you have to know how my system works to understand it. And it only adds, a couple minutes to the compile time of the code base.
And it uses this many threads.
Yeah. We have lots of cores, and like it uses these threads, and it's faster now, I think. I feel like you're thinking of Vessel when you say that.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
I'm thinking of every Direct 3D title when I say that. You actually had some involvement in that project, not in the Linux and Mac version, but I think a console version, if I remember.
Oh yeah, you're right. I kind of glazed over that because it didn't come out. But I did work on an Xbox 360 version of Vessel a while back, and that ended up not letting me finish it because I was the third porter that showed up, and they were already in the hole pretty far.
And what was that like to work with? Yeah, Felipe, you can talk about it too if you want.
I think both of us will say the same thing, so I'll say it as quickly as possible. It's a gorgeous code base, but it's super, super complicated, and if any one thing is wrong, then it kind of falls on itself. But my god, is it gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty elegant.
Nice.
But yeah, I like Vessel. Vessel's a good game. But yeah, they were doing some things that made a lot of sense probably in theory, but didn't really match. It didn't match Xbox architecture that well. Maybe it matched a 4 or 8 core processor a lot better.
Yeah, I think the minimum's 4, though I crushed it to 1. If for anyone who's interested in a port that actually did well, there's a PS3 port of it, and they actually wrote a fair number of things about it that were really interesting. And funnily enough,
oh, that was a great write-up. Do you have the link to that?
It's somewhere. We'll put it in the notes. But like, one of the great things about it is that in one of the blocks of code they reference, you see a comment from me, and it's like they found the exact same problems I found, but I was like, I'm just gonna take this assert out and let it run. So there's like this really, I think there's like one of the comments is just a straight up apology from me, and they actually found it.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that was from you.
Well, it has -flibit at the end of it, which is where all my comments end.
Oh, I gotta reread that thing.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. It's like one of the heavily templated scripting things. You know how that goes.
Yeah. But yeah, I wrote a talk about how code sucks. And that's okay. That's what I'm here for.
It is tricky though, like as a developer, if you're not used to doing it, letting other people see your code, you feel kind of, I don't know, embarrassed maybe? Is that the word that you have? Like people go, oh, here's my code, I'm sorry, it's so terrible.
That's the other angle. Yes.
But it's like everyone's code is terrible.
Yeah, I was trying to take away that, what's the word for it? Like, stigma?
Stigma.
Uh,
Yeah, because that was a stigma I dealt with a lot, and now I just don't care. Like, my code works and it ships. So, what does your code do?
And so, as we sort of kind of start to wrap things up, is there any game that that you'd like to port if you had the magical ability to attract the attention of any game developer?
Actually thought about this before this cast, and I think the one that comes to mind right now is Age of Empires 2, the HD version of it on Steam. I would love to get a hold of those guys, but I have no clue who's behind the curtain there. I'm a huge Age of Empires fan growing up. I played that game so much.
I played a lot of the first one.
Yeah, I played the.
I wrote a
Same here.
stupid thing in Visual Basic back then that would randomize teams so that, because we were 3 of us would be playing, and would have it just pick the 5 AI we'd be fighting against, because we played so much of it. But we destroy everything we played, so it'd be good to see that, though.
But yeah, I would love to do that because it's it's Windows only, but they're using Steamworks' networking. I feel like, and I'm sure they're using the direct. They're doing something. They did something to the direct draw to make it work, and I don't feel like it would be that hard to do it.
All fingers crossed that that the opportunity somehow mysteriously presents itself.
The chat says that it would be close to a miracle to have the timing right, but they ported it to Steamworks' networking layer. I mean, and maybe he's referencing floating point inconsistencies across processors and OSs and stacks, but you can solve that stuff. I'd be up for the challenge. I'm not going to say it's going to be super easy, but it's something that I'd be very interested in.
So yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to bring up or chat about before we move on?
I would, but we can cut this section out completely. So just make a note from here till we get into the next section of the cast. Maybe we can cut this out. What platform do you primarily work on? No, it's fine. And honestly, I've read the interview where
I work on Windows.
Right. And I knew that. But you have reasons for it, though. And I think sometimes knowing those reasons helps people understand, why sometimes there's no reason to consider that one OS might be better than another, or to have those kind of comparisons where it's more you're trying to use a tool to get a job done.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be honest, one of the main reasons is because I'm so used to it. Ever since I left AMI, it's been 5 years of Windows as my primary platform, but at the same time, it does have a huge benefit of all the games I get run on Windows already. So I can get their game compiling and running, and then I can port it to SDL and port it to OpenGL and compare before and after very quickly. And I use NVIDIA Insight to debug the graphics, and I can debug DirectX with it. I can debug OpenGL with it, and I can compare stuff down to the little bits and make it as perfect as I can. And that's one of the main reasons why I do it. But that said, I mean, if there was better tools, and there probably is, I need to get updated with what's new on Linux. But if they had a good debugger, if Linux had a great debugger, if they had a good graphics debugger, I would probably use it most of the time because I like Linux. Whenever I move over there, I have no problem working.
And so when you are working on a game or testing or building, what does your Linux environment look like, and how do you access that?
It's a separate partition. So I work on a MacBook Pro that I spent way too much money on, and I have a partition dedicated to Fedora. And yeah, I think it's Fedora. I don't think I've even updated Fedora. I think it's been 19 for a while. I just followed Edward's advice. He said to get Fedora, so that's what I used.
Nice. I only just upgraded to 20 recently, like just before 21 hit, I think.
But yeah, I triple boot my MacBook.
So Flibbit, you're a Fedora user as well, hey?
I am. I actually just this week updated to 22. So y'all are behind.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was on 20 though, so before this week, so I feel you.
I think.
So you're saying you triple boot, Aaron?
Yeah, I figured out how to do it. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be. But yeah, I triple boot the MacBook Pro, Windows 7, Mac, and Fedora.
See, I think that's outstanding because I'm a big proponent of use what works for you, and if those are the tools you're comfortable with, use those. Because at the end of it, it's still going to benefit Linux gamers.
Yeah, and I feel like it would be nice if I didn't have to switch OSs all the time, and maybe I just use some virtual machines or set up a build box or something. But I feel like there's a benefit to running it the way someone would run it. I don't know. I haven't developed enough in like a Fedora VM or a Mac VM to know if there's huge differences when it comes down to graphics or something. I feel like there would be problems.
I think for building you're fine, but for testing,
yeah, I feel like. Well, maybe, I don't know if they've solved this or not. I need to look into it, and it's one of the things when I have time I want to look into. But to actually testing with the real graphics card and stuff. I feel like that's emulated somewhat or something.
VMware is okay. If you just need to make sure that it boots, then you're fine. But usually, because what I do, since I'm on Fedora 22, I actually have several VMware instances to do building for like glibc 215, for example. But as far as like testing, I mean, that's what you have a QA team for. I mean, you don't really have to worry about. I mean, if you want to make sure it works locally, then sure. But I mean, any differences in hardware's performance and or AMD bugs or something like that, but it's not that big of a priority.
Yeah, when I released Shadow Warrior, I had to build an AMD machine because I realized that I did not make the game work for AMD.
Whoops. So was that a big thing to overcome, or was it fairly straightforward?
Yeah, I mean, I had to go to Staples and buy a graphics card. So that was the hardest part. Once I had the machine, it was just like, oh, okay, they don't like this part of the shader. I'll make it do something different. Yeah, they were actually just more strict to the spec for OpenGL than NVIDIA was or Intel. So I just had to do things more correctly to make it work.
Yeah, that's interesting. It feels like a lot of this stuff where Linux users are saying that AMD cards are better or NVIDIA cards are better, or that some game doesn't work properly. I guess sometimes it's not always that clear cut. If you say that it's adhering to a spec more strictly, then that kind of suggests that the AMD driver for that at least is better.
Yeah, like the NVIDIA, it would be nice if it's good if they follow the specs because I can read the spec and just do what the spec says and then it'll work. Whereas NVIDIA is pretty forgiving and they won't error when you're doing stuff slightly wrong, and so it pretty much put me in this false sense of security, I suppose.
Yeah, it's kind of tough.
But then there's just flat out bugs that I have to work around.
Yeah, and then the thing about specs is they're only good if everybody's using them.
Yeah.
So if the code you're working on isn't following the same spec, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, the specs don't mean anything. You just have to get it to work. Shadow Warrior was very intense. I was debugging, per vendor shader assembly to figure out what was going on with the shaders because they were generated shaders too, so that made it a little bit harder to debug it. But
yeah. So on that note, we might shift across to some of the recent SteamLUG community happenings things. We had a few events recently. Bean, you want to talk about them?
Well, also usually at this point too, we'll say, hey, Aaron, you're more than welcome to stick around if you want. Listen to the rest of the cast. If not, if you've got other things you need to be doing, because it does sound like you kind of value your time. We can say goodbye now, but either way, just letting you know you're still welcome to hang around. So the different events that we've had recently, we had Fistful of Frags, Battle Block Theater, Awesome Knots.
Nice.
Yeah, we actually was there for the Awesome Knots and the Battle Block Theater run. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. The Awesome Knots, we actually ended up getting like 6 people. At one point, it dropped down to about 3 of us, but we went on and started playing against in some of the pub matches, and we won one for Slug, so it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that would have been cool. Because I think the previous times we've done it, we've always stayed closed within the community and not opened it up to public stuff. But it's kind of cool to get out there and be amongst the broader community too. Hey.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it started with just 6 of us in there playing, and then when it got to 3, we're like, well, let's just take this. Let's try it. I think that's when we'll probably end up running again. There have been some updates to it, and the performance has definitely improved since the last time I had played it, which was probably 6 months ago.
Yeah, cool. Did you make it to any of the events there, Telly?
I did. Turns out it wasn't my fault, but the Fistful of Frag server that I run, automatic updater kept on resetting the server because of an incomplete update from Steam.
Whoops.
So we got that snafu worked out, and it shouldn't happen in that way again. We'll see if it's a legitimate workaround fix for partial downloads.
I hope that outside of that, the event was still enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely enjoyable.
I've got to stop sniffing glue because I forgot I was also at that event too. And that Fistful of Frags, for people who haven't played it, it's got a very interesting. The shooting mechanics are unique.
Very much so.
You shoot like heavy weapons like muskets, and the projectiles actually travel like they should. I guess is the best way to put it. So they're kind of slow moving and heavy, and so it's got a dramatically different gameplay than some of the other team shooters we played.
It's a cowboy game.
I enjoy the fanning mechanic when you're using a revolver.
The game has revolvers.
Yeah.
See, we'll have to have another event so I can play more.
But you can fan the I don't know anything about guns. Do you know, Telly? It's for rapid firing your pistol.
So for a revolver, older revolvers have a double action where when you pull the trigger, it pulls the hammer back. And for fanning a revolver, you just hold the trigger down and you swipe down on the hammer, which strikes the bullet, in order to cause the gun to fire instead.
So it's like a lot more involved than just clicking a button.
Well,
And it feels like it's more work.
this is how you do it in real life, at least.
Yeah. Have you done it in the game?
Oh, sure. It's an alternate fire.
So have either of you played Receiver? Because it sounds like you're kind of describing that maybe you should play Receiver instead.
Actually, you know what I have? But I'm terrible at it.
Well, I'm with you on that one.
But I do love its running mechanic. I really like the whole kind of idea that you do something tense and exerting when you want to run.
Now, see, I'm old school. I should just be able to boost like whenever. And if I hold shift, I run fast, and that's all it does.
And diagonal.
That's right, and I can run diagonally, just like I do in real life.
I was also at the Awesome Nuts event. That was my first time playing the game.
Oh yeah.
I successfully drug down my team on the winning side.
Nah, it was not like that. What'd you think overall, though? Would you come to another event?
Sure, why not? Just happened to have it in my Steam library for way too long without ever opening it.
So after the show, we're planning to have an Outland event where people can hang around and mumble while they're playing the game and chat. And depending upon whether Aaron's still around, he may or may not answer some questions.
Gaze upon Aaron's work.
It's like surprise.
I can be around for questions.
I totally forgot to mention that. And then tomorrow we've got Borderlands the pre-sequel, which is, what is that, our 4th event for that?
Third, maybe?
No, it could be 3rd.
And if we can get, I think it's the third one, and if we can get the turnout we had before, we'd probably match what we had for the Awesome Nuts event. So, I'm getting people into the pre-sequel one person at a time. You're welcome, Gearbox.
And then moving on to Steam and Valve news. So the big topic that everybody is passionate about at the moment is Steam refunds. Anybody got any opinions?
Oh, lots of people have opinions, and especially about the Steam refunds.
So
You know what would have been better is if they'd bundled this together with the paid mods thing and just done it all together. Like, hey, Steam's had a whole new whitewash. Look at what we're doing today. I think that probably would have gone better for them.
So the lowdown is that they're offering people unconditional refunds on games for any reason within 2 weeks of purchase time, or 2 weeks since purchase time, as long as they're under 2 hours of playtime, which is it's fairly broad. There have been reports of people getting refunds for games that they had purchased up to 6 months ago. So that's is showing that they're willing to consider stuff beyond the 14-day period. There's been talk about it perhaps being automated or automatically approved. I don't know what the go is there. It seems kind of vague. It's hard to get a lot of solid data on it.
Well,
That might actually change because I'm talking a lot during this cast. Sorry,
No man, it's cool.
but this actually some context because I'm looking at my newsfeed right now, and they just told us that there's actually going to be data for this now. They're actually going to
Right.
provide data at the front end for developers to look at.
From what I understand, there was already a little bit from one of the developers I was talking to said that some of this stuff was already available. But yeah, I saw that announcement post too. And I don't know. I don't feel like we should be talking about it because it's on the in the Steamworks dev group. But I thought some of the
Well, no, I mean it's something that's should be noted because it's. I think one of the reasons that there is this stigma over it is because we don't have any data, so we don't know if it's really being horribly abused or if it's something where it's like, for example, if
right people are definitely guessing at what the stuff that they're seeing means.
in addition to the fact that one refund for someone that sells 10 games a month is definitely different from someone who gets one refund for a game that sells 100,000 in a month. So it's like having that relative data might be helpful, and it's something that it may be worth developers considering opening that information up as well. which is why I bring this up, even though it is from the Steamworks feed, because it is. I mean, I don't look at the numbers a lot. Like, if people ask me, like, how old do your games sell? And I'm like, I don't know. But it seems like with this news coming out, it seems like people would care about that a little bit more, especially now that refunds are a thing, which until, Origin and others came in, it's like the concept of refunds just kind of got lost. So we're having to kind of wean ourselves back into it.
Yeah, it does feel like it's something that's been missing, and Steam has been criticized on many occasions for it. The thing I didn't like about that post was the second last sentence. It just sort of feels like it puts it all in the wrong kind of light.
And I was going to say that's kind of where I tend to be very impulsive, and I react to things sometimes, and then I think about it afterwards. Thing. But in this case, it's one of those where I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at all the different posts that have been made and so far, and I think it's just, I feel like there's too little data to work from right now to figure out exactly what kind of impact this is going to have. I mean, is this the death of indie devs? Is this the death of art games? I think it's just like, these are stupid questions to be exploring right now, and we don't really know what the full impact of these refunds are going to be.
Yeah, it's definitely too soon to say.
Yeah. I mean, there's been people who have been sharing initial impressions and things that look like an impact. But this stuff is all new, and it's hard to know whether there are people who are just testing the water to see what it's like. It's hard to know whether or not there are real issues that are visible, or whether there's just stuff that people aren't quite identifying very well.
Also, it happened literally a week before the summer sale, so
yeah,
sales probably will go down that week.
Yeah, it's a lot of factors at play.
It's interesting you mentioned the summer sale, because this, to me, this is like, this summer sale I have no interest in, and it's the first one that's been like that, and that was even before the refunds policy.
So I don't know.
It was whatever the next sale was, but then that could just simply be me. But it was more that I already have so many games to play that unless there isn't some compelling reason for me to pick it up, I'm probably not going to.
Well, I feel like I guess the devil's advocate thing here is like, a lot of people are saying like, people are just going to return stuff because they can get something else with the money. At the same time, I feel like there's going to be a group of people eventually, once it's known that like, okay, you can just refund it. It's easy to refund now. I feel like there'll be more impulse purchases because that you can refund it.
Right.
It is kind of tricky though. The condition, the 2-hour condition, feels very, very arbitrary, and it does seem like it's something that's gonna have a little bit of an impact. I expect that's probably gonna be revised over time. The thing I look at it, and like I think there's something that you could say was like definitely a mistake as far as handling it goes, and that is that, as far as I'm aware, like as far as I can't see anything in the Steamworks dev group about it. I don't think developers had any kind of warning about the refund policy going live.
Nope.
And to retroactively introduce something that it's a big change to the existing policies that Steam had, and for better or worse, there were a lot of people who were relying on this whole kind of Steam don't give refunds, so our hands are tied kind of thing. To have something like that change overnight, potentially when you had just launched or had a sale that had just launched, and would potentially be viewing your sales history and banking on having a bunch of pre-sale sales that then got refunded for your sale that was currently running, and like it feels like a awkward situation for anybody who happened to be in that position.
Now, something to keep in mind too is that refunds are not, I mean, I'm sure even once it gets automated, they're probably not going to be instantaneous. And so...
No, they're not.
And so I think like a lot of the concern right now is, it's not just the refund policy, it's the refund policy combined with the fact that we're trying to get everything down to a 90% off sale at some point. It seems like that's the goal, is to make every game available at 90% off at some point. Those two factors combined, sure, because then that means that there's a broad range of people that will now have the ability to buy your game really cheap and refund it. And if it comes out cheaper, do the same.
Yeah, I think it is going to have a big impact there.
If, on the other hand, we start bringing the value of these games back up again, we may just see people maybe considering what they're about to buy because it's going to cost them a bit more, knowing that it could be 3 days to 14 days that they're going to see that money come back. So I'd like to wait and see how things kind of pan out once it's had more time and there's no sale going on.
So when this was announced, I went through the process of acquiring a refund. I picked a game that I was interested in, and I bought it, and I played it for a few minutes, and I wrote a review on it, and I played it long enough to get a Steam trading card. And then I requested a refund. I said in the description that I was planning to write about it. And this was my test of the system. 1 week and 14 hours later, I got my refund confirmation, and just now, which is another 3 days later, the amount has entered my Steam wallet. So that's from what I've read, that's a fairly long turnaround for these kind of sales. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to see. I got a confirmation email saying that a request had been received, and another confirmation email saying that it had been approved. And that was about it. The game disappeared from my library. I was able to go and rebuy it. My review stayed where it was, and the cards that I had acquired are still in my inventory. So that's an interesting it's an interesting thing right there, to know that none of that stuff seems to be affected, particularly the cards with regards to the market and stuff that's there for that.
Well, at least with the cards, at least a small percentage of it when they get sold does go to the developers or whomever is getting paid for said game.
Yeah. In the review as well, like there's a little mark where it says that the game is in your library, or you own the game, I think, and that's not there if you don't own the game, if I remember correctly. I can't check at the moment. But it feels like if there's the absence of something rather than an indication of something, you're not going to think that that the review came from an account that doesn't have the game.
And so these, again, things that are probably going to change. Valve does iterate often, and not necessarily for better, but they do. So we may see this change, and we'll see what happens in a couple months.
Yeah. And so, as we mentioned, a number of developers, particularly people with niche games and short games, have spoken up to say that they feel like they've had or seen a negative impact that concerns them, or they see things in the policy that they think aren't the best. All of those that I've read, they're all people who agree with the idea of refunds and are glad that there's a refund policy in place, but feel like for particular edge cases, in particular short games, because the 2-hour thing kind of frames that as a you can potentially play through an entire game if it's a short one. What do you guys think about those sorts of situations in terms of just sort of being worried rather than saying that there is any actual problem?
Someone who has a lot of games under his belt that are less than 1 hour long, I'm not worried, but I've historically never worried about the numbers. I feel like if it's like if you think about Proteus, you can get through that in 45 minutes in a single playthrough. It's procedural, but you may only play it once, and just because they can, will they just do it because okay, I can just get it for free? Will they really want to go through the effort of that process, or will they just pirate it? Like, I don't know. It seems easier anyway,
Right.
even with the refund system.
And that's kind of where I was headed, is that for some of these things, it just, the idea that you're going to have to wait a matter of days for these funds to be returned. I don't want to just, that delay might be enough people to go, yeah, even for $2.99, I'm not going to, no, it's not worth it. And they'll just move on. And maybe that's a good thing, because that means that maybe the people that are buying the game are more interested in the game itself.
And if the game's like 20 cents and they still refund it, you may want to think about why, because that's a lot of work for 20 cents.
Very good point.
I think the refund situation highlights a couple of things that might not be immediately visible, and a lot of those relate to the thought that people put into purchases and the value that people put into the games that they pick up. I mean, so many people end up buying games that they never play, and what does that mean? There are a lot of people who buy games but probably wouldn't buy it if they knew what they were getting into. And at the end of the day, does someone deserve that kind of sale? Is that kind of sale a bit, underhanded?
I would much rather people buy something that they'll actually play, even if it's not mine.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, none of my stuff's available for sale, but I'd much rather have people who want to play it than people who aren't interested in it. I'd rather build a passionate user base than an empty one that doesn't care.
Doesn't mean I won't advertise like hell, though, because I will in about an hour.
So there were a couple of articles by a few developers that a few of us have been talking about and reading through before the show, and I thought they might be worth sharing. So, Bean, you read the Puppy Games one. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. the biggest one. I was surprised to find myself agreeing with him. I mean, and not all of it, obviously, not all of it. But I like the one of the things I really like in this is that he's kind of pointing out that, again, it's kind of the same thing. It's really early to be trying to figure out anything. There's so many other factors. Like one of the things that Kaz points out here that others hadn't was that the coupons up to that point had all been invalidated.
Right.
And since a lot of his sales came from that, when these coupons are gone, well, there it goes.
Yeah, he said that a significant portion of his sales were from like 90% off coupons. And the thing that, you know, he showed a graph that showed a massive downturn in sales at the time that the refund policy was announced. And people took that to mean that the refunds had massively affected his sales, but it turned out that he wasn't getting any of those coupon sales anymore. And so it wasn't necessarily people refunding the game, it was people not buying it. No problems, Aaron. If you just, we'll grab you a soundbite of you saying goodbye so that we can edit it in.
Sounds good, yeah.
So thanks very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Hope you've had fun.
Oh yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Awesome. It was great having you here.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I work in the middle of nowhere with no one to talk to, so this is a nice time to talk to people.
Oh, you're welcome to join us anytime.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
But back to the Puppy Games article, I think there's some good points there in there about how the Steam sales with their, you know, hey, this title's 66% off, but wait, we can make this thing 10 cents. You know, it's just that kind of, don't worry about what else it is you're buying. It's only 10 cents. And come on, you 6 million people, throw us 10 cents.
Right.
You know, and it's that kind of thing. I just, so I agree with bits and pieces of this, that we do kind of have this unfortunate race to devalue every game that's out there. And yet somehow feed people the idea that the people on the back end making and creating these games are somehow still raking in the same, they're getting the same money that Valve is.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I really like that he highlighted that that we do have. No, don't know where. Give me a sec. Yeah, that like I like that he highlighted that the lack of a refund policy meant that you would get away with charging less, and people would make their bad purchases and buy your game and not care because it was so cheap. But you managed to get your 10 cents from 6 million people, if you ever managed to do that. But now that there's a refund policy in place, that the kind of pricing models and the kind of sales models that have been used to date are probably going to have to change dramatically.
And I definitely agree with that. I think the big piece of that is that it by making these games so available for such a low price, it lowered the risk factor involved. You're like, it's only a couple bucks. I was definitely not going to pay 15, but if I can only pay 3, well, let's see if it's any good. And then if it's not, you go, it's $3. Oh, learned my lesson. I wasn't going to pay $15 for it anyway. But meanwhile, you spent $3 on a title that's now going to sit in your library forever and not, you know, it's just, other than the fact that that's great, it tells me I have one more title for SteamOS and Linux, I just don't see the value in it anymore. And I think that's why this particular sale I didn't get wowed and ready to go for this sale.
But yeah, so the second article there linked also talks about the way that we've been devaluing games over time, and that focuses a lot on bundling and this kind of mentalities, which I think are kind of relevant. But you know, the thing about refunds, and something that kind of I haven't seen anybody really talking about, but I think it's a really big thing, is that a lot of our attitudes towards refunds and towards consumer rights in this kind of context are related to physical goods. And so we're taking the history and the understanding of relationships between producers and consumers based on things that had some kind of per unit production cost, or things that were physically devalued by being used. And so we don't have that at all with digital goods. Making a copy costs nothing, and the costs of distribution are kind of negligible and not really worth considering at the moment. Which means that, you know, the things that you lose by having, I mean, there's no such thing as a used good, you know. So I think that there's a lot of learning to do as well for digital goods. I think that just kind of culturally that we're not on the ball as far as understanding the implications go. of what it means to have digital goods and sell digital goods, and what the implications of refunds there are. I mean, if there's 0 per unit production cost, then there's there are very few justifications for accepting or for not accepting a return or expecting a refund, I guess, because the good itself hasn't been devalued. It doesn't impinge on your ability to resell it, as it were.
No, unless I misunderstood something in like the last link that's in there. One of the points is that, like, for example, if you're making a game that you errs more towards the art side of things, that if you're doing something along those lines, that someone has already, whether or not they've been able to process it all, they've experienced your art. They can't unsee it now. It's been done. They've been through it. And if that's what you're putting out, then I can see where there's this sense that they've already got it. They already got the art that I was putting out there, and they got the whole thing, and now they got it for free. So I mean, I understand it, but
yeah,
again, it's one of those things you said. This is that we don't really have a direct relation to physical goods, so we have to kind of start, continue working on this and exploring how we start to handle this.
Yeah.
The music industry will be a very good reference for this, because because I've been in the music industry, and we have a lot of licensing things that deal with this. Like, we have things like mechanical licenses, we have things like performance licenses and things like that. And I think what that person is looking for is like a performance licensing fee type thing, where it's like you're not paying for the executable, you're paying for the time you ran the executable, which is a weird idea, but
it is.
I don't know.
I don't even know that the music industry has it right either.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the big asterisk behind it, is that they have these ideas that may be worth looking at, but it's worth noting that the music industry isn't doing the very best right now.
Yeah. It's tricky. I was talking to someone earlier who was sort of saying, well, maybe the situation is that that the models that we have at the moment aren't sustainable, and they aren't what they should be, where the big budget games can sell, can spend, multi-million-dollar budgets to make a piece of entertainment that most people are only going to appreciate for a couple of hours, if that. How big can that get and still be sustainable? And maybe we've already passed that point and need to think more about what we produce and how we produce it. But yeah, I think for the refund system, personally, I'd like to see developers have the ability to set the playtime limit themselves. And that way, if you don't like the refund clause, you just choose to not buy the game, and developers can be comfortable that they're not getting into a situation that that allows people to get in that kind of art experience like you were talking about, Bean, where you experience the thing that the game is for, and then you kind of got all the value out of it already.
And well, the thing too is that unfortunately time is so arbitrary. We're gonna have to find some other metric that can be used, because hard drive space, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Achievements.
Maybe if there is an achievement for completion, then yeah, if you've hit that, then maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it might be.
What's funny is that you could totally abuse that too, because you could just have an achievement on startup.
Right, but the developer's got to implement that.
Right. I'm just saying.
See, right.
Oh,
Gotcha.
right, yeah.
It'd be interesting if someone attempted that.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's like trying to figure out a performance license for an executable is an odd thing to consider.
And I feel like this is probably going to exert pressure for people who are worried about this stuff. Not necessarily because people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, but I suspect that there will be people who are worried enough to start adding Steamworks dependencies into games that are currently DRM free. I can kind of see that happening. I already see a few people who have DRM free titles who are worried by the refund concept.
Yeah, I'm just going to go to ASCAP's site, because I think they have some stuff about licensing that might be relevant to this discussion.
It's cool. I was going to say that, there's also been someone who distributed their game DRM free who's absolutely positive about the refund policy and not concerned at all.
Yeah. No, there's a broad spectrum of opinions everywhere.
So I really think this is good, though, but it means that there's the conversation's happening, and that's what's going to make the change occur later, where things get to a point where things work better for the distribution model that we're putting forward.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just posting this link to chat, and I would like it to be in the notes. Just look at how many different circumstances there are for licenses just on that page alone, and it gets worse from there.
Jewish community centers.
Yeah, it gets real specific.
Marine vessels with overnight accommodation.
So, and compare this to game licensing.
Hmm.
We're so primitive in comparison,
I don't know. Or are we advanced? I mean, that looks silly.
but it happens, and someone had to write it. So it had to happen, and then someone had to go. We need a contract for this,
Hmm.
and that's where we're at now. It's like these things are not just executables; they have some specific. There's something beyond what you're doing with the executable. We need to figure out the paperwork for this.
Hmm. I guess the other thing that it makes me, I don't know, uneasy about the refund thing is that it doesn't. It kind of almost encourages people to not be thoughtful about their buying decisions. You know, and even in the introduction page on the Steam website, they're saying, make you feel a bit more comfortable buying a game, early access game that you weren't sure of, or something like that. And that kind of encouragement of people to buy things without thinking about what it is that they're buying, I think, like, that's a bigger problem than anybody scamming money out of people on Steam or anything like that, because that stuff gets dealt with, and it always got dealt with. But we still end up with more people just buying crap that they could have avoided buying if they knew what it was they were getting into, and that information was already there.
Well, I'd like to see Steam drop the early access from being eligible. I mean, I've already seen a couple times where it does say it's not eligible for refund, so that is a possibility. So I'd like to see it just drop early access together, because the idea there is that there's a dev team or a single dev or somebody's working on something, and they just, they're looking to get additional funding where they can to help make sure this thing gets put together. So,
Right.
the thing is that if that's, I dislike the idea of someone putting together something where all of a sudden they get, an influx of, like, say, 1,500 people, and the next day 800 of them go back. Or it's one of those titles where it gets people's ire up, right? And the angries come out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like the very next day we just pulled it all. Because haha, F you.
It's tricky. It means that you can't budget on, well, if they've been showing stuff that goes back, if they've been refunding stuff back 6 months, then that's a long time period to avoid doing stuff. It's a long lead to give to your cash flow. But let's assume that it sticks at 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I mean, it's not huge, I guess, but it is a lot of time if you're constantly watching the numbers to see stuff that you can't reliably make decisions based on. But early access feels like it should be like, if you believe in the project, then get on board, and if you don't believe in it, go away. I'd much rather see it framed like that.
But then there's that gray area in the middle. And it's a tough topic because we've been talking about it for like half an hour.
Right.
So I hear that Dota 2 has been getting some Source 2 depots. Was that a segue, or was that just this really abrupt turn about face?
It was really horrible. But that's all right. I'll forgive you because we moved on.
Very smooth.
It's Dota.
Mm.
Someone else have to speak on that. I don't Dota.
So, was it late last year? The editing tools for Dota got an update, which used some of the Source engine, if I remember correctly. I don't remember either. But, yeah, so the depots have been added, these Source 2 Dota 2 content depots. And as Telly says, they're not available to normal people. They're probably only accessible via specific subscriptions, or maybe via branches. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into that aspect. But I guess the upshot of it is that it looks like Dota 2 is being groomed for a Source 2 release, and if that's probably being tested at the moment. And Telly, you've been watching this stuff. Do you have any thoughts?
Oh, we just saw the Dota 2 engine with Source 2 during the Vulcan talks back in March.
Hmm.
That's all I have to add. So we already knew that Dota 2 was going to do something with Source 2.
Yeah. But it's kind of nice to see that on the horizon. I wonder what kind of time frame we're going to see on that. It feels like...
As far as I know, they're aiming for parallel operation with the Source 1 engine. So it's not going to be a cutover to the new engine. It's going to be something that people can opt into and keep on playing, at least for a while.
Yeah, I kind of, if I were to guess, I'd say they might be considering doing like that kind of soft launch that you're talking about. a little bit later in the year, and then when the Steam machines roll out, maybe Source 2 will be the default for Dota 2. Maybe I don't know. Did I say when the Steam machines roll out? Because that's totally what I meant to say.
No, but go ahead and say it now. We'll just put it in there.
Yeah, so maybe when the Steam machines roll out, that would be the kind of time frame that they're looking at for more serious deployment.
That would be interesting because
As speculation.
now that the Steam machines and the other Steam hardware and the Steam controller become available for pre-order, it'd be interesting to see if it would launched with that, because we know that one of the big tasks there was trying to get games like Dota to be playable with that controller. And so, yeah.
Right, that's been a big focus for them, hasn't it?
We're getting a lot of their games to work with a controller. I mean, apparently, I don't tried this yet, but you can play Team Fortress 2 with a controller now.
So I hear.
I don't know why you would. I don't know. Maybe you like permadeath, or you like dying a lot, like in Running with Rifles. Anyway.
So also showing up has been a lot of the Steam hardware has become available for pre-order. Nice moment's silence there for the Steam hardware that's available for pre-order.
I think everybody just cares about the controller.
And I have to admit that that's the piece that appeals to me. I mean, like I said, I've already said before, I love twin stick shooters. I love some of the faster paced action games. But when they have kind of that right stick movement, this Logitech is awful compared to my PS3 controller. But I can't get the DualShock to work reliably, so I don't even bother anymore.
Right.
But that being said, the Steam controller, though, looks like something where at least that right stick isn't necessarily a stick. I might have, I'm really looking forward to being able to have that in my hands and actually see how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see it. And as Corbin mentions, the Steam Link is the other sort of Valve-produced product that's become available for pre-order. And as far as we can tell, it looks like it's going to be some kind of embedded system at the moment. Is that right?
It's ARMv7 apparently. And it has hardware H.264 decoding, which is probably how they're going to make it faster compared to just using a PC. That is to say, it'll be much. I do mean faster because I actually have been testing it with the dev kit that we have, and it's actually reasonably quick, even on Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So they, alongside this hardware availability thing, they also launched a trailer for the Steam controller.
Oh, yeah, it's very exciting. The video is really good.
Yeah. It's nice to see our old friend Assault Android Cactus hiding there in the middle.
That is such a beautiful spot for that game too, and it is the kind of game I think that highlights that living room goal that Valve has with SteamOS.
Yeah, and
because it only has local co-op. It has no online multiplayer, and there are no plans to bring it.
Right. And as Corbin says, it shows city skylines as well, and kind of shows off the way that the touchpads can emulate mouse control to control stuff in that game. So Valve have also sent out the dev kits for the HTC Revive. We've seen some developers tweeting pictures of their rigs showing up, and Valve have also released the user manual for the gear as well.
So, did you get yours?
No. It seemed like to apply for the dev kit stuff, they were looking for projects that were a bit closer to release than mine is, and for developers who had a little bit more published stuff than I do. And then by the time I came back to look at it, it was like, yeah, they're going to ship pretty soon. Consumer version's going to be ready pretty soon. May as well just wait for a consumer version. So I guess I'll do that. And yeah, as Corbin mentions, Valve put out a press release recently saying that 35% of their available pre-order stock had sold, and I think that was, I don't know, it was Thursday, Wednesday, sometime. So moving on to tech news. Telly's just mentioned that SDL 2.0.4 is coming very close to having its release. You want to tell us about that?
No.
I appreciate your honesty.
Well, we've had a long-standing issue with the eastern part of the world where they've been not having a input method for their character sets. And it should be picking up the iBus support that got put in like a year ago or something. So like Dota 2 in China should be helped. Ooh, fancy.
I wish we had like intermission music or hold music that we could play temporarily while things go quiet.
Yes. Is that Alex? Spasowski?
I guess so.
The silences are good. It gives us something to cut.
Well, for
Yeah.
for the magical edit,
Oh, Baines, okay.
Alex Barnes in the chat has said that he did the iBus code, which is very cool and neat.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps out that gap in games that are out there right now.
Dead keys on multiple platforms is actually really messy right now because we actually have this problem on Windows too, and people who you ship with FNA have been complaining to me about it, and we thought we had a fix for 204, and then it turns out that was actually what was being done before, but then it got changed again, and this is what localization is like, kids.
Welcome to the world.
Yeah. My solution is don't have text in your game, don't have input in your game. Done.
We shall control your game with nasal breathing.
Yeah, microphone input only.
I got that noted. We're going to include that in Haunt. If you're the ghost, you have to breathe into your mic every once in a while.
Nice.
All right, so moving on. It looks like the Unreal Engine 4 Linux editor has been marked complete. This, of course, is according to Trello, and that just means that someone there has been able to run it successfully, compile it, it's building. I guess, passed a number of tests to get to that point. According to the Linux support page on the wiki, on the Unreal Engine wiki, they're looking for people to use it, report on it, but your mileage may vary. It's going to be full of bugs. But for what it's worth, at least there are native tools, and there are only a couple of engines I can think of that actually have the Linux native tools themselves.
Yeah, it's a big thing to have. So in the 4.8 release, I think they're marking it as early access.
Something like that. But basically, ready to use, but not production ready.
Yeah, which is interesting because I don't think that there are like it's kind of weird to say, hey, test this and tell us what's going on for a new platform. Like, are there any Unreal Engine familiar developers who are already making games who are likely to use it, or is it only people who are already on Linux and haven't used this stuff before, and are they the best people to test it? Like, it's kind of this weird catch-22, whereas if you're not already there and don't have the existing user base, that it's hard to get the right kind of feedback. But anybody who's interested, definitely pick it up, have a play with it.
Yeah, and if you look at the spirit of the wiki, that does seem like what they're looking at is just basically, if you're already inclined to be here, and you're already, if you're already looking for how to do this, then, if you want to continue further, here's what's ahead of you. They're pretty clear about laying out that it is not a simple process. It's not as easy as just unpack the zip and double click something and you're where you're going, or run some simple command. You're going to have to build it, and you may run into problems. For example, one of the things I noticed on there is they're still having a problem with Arch Linux, which is sad for me. So I will not be trying to build that anytime soon. But I'll keep an eye on it. And that, of course, that ties into now. That was marked complete for the 4.8 release, and then just like I think it was like a week after that, here it is. Unreal Engine 4.8 is finally launched,
and that's got a huge number of that's a really big release. I think
it's huge. The changelog is fairly long, and I was trying to pick out some of the highlights. I was cherry picking the ones I was looking at, but it looks like one of the things they have in there now is that if you can choose like a desktop target, and that will automatically try and build for WinMac and Linux.
Oh, nice.
And I think the other one that for me, I think is kind of exciting is that SpeedTree is now usable on Linux. Now, I didn't go any deeper.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know if that means it's only usable inside Unreal Engine, but that's a commonly used piece of middleware, and I've heard you guys talk about this before, that sometimes it's not so much just the game code, it's the middleware stuff that doesn't exist.
Right, and that ends up being a huge hurdle for a lot of developers. So, Aaron and Flibbit, since we have you here, have you ever encountered situations where middleware has confounded your efforts?
Yes. Yep, that's pretty much the answer. Yes.
Yes.
Pretty much every middleware except for Rad. Every middleware except for Rad's middlewares always have problems. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Oh, yeah.
So having said that, what do you think is different about Rad's tools?
They actually test and build them and run them. That's basically my only logic for it. The only reason that it works is because they probably actually run it and they actually check. There are some times where I look at middlewares and I'm like, there's no way that they would have released this without having seen it. But it's here and I'm having to fix it.
And you're staring right at it and you're like, there's no way someone could have let this through.
It's like every audio library I've ever shipped with knows how to pick the default audio device. And there are middlewares out there that you have to pay good money for that don't know how to do that.
So Rad Game Tools are
Rad employs very good engineers.
Rad's that's the mob that makes Bink, right?
Yeah, Bink, Iggy. They also do stuff like telemetry. They're working on a debugger right now, which I am psyched for.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I just hope it happens.
Yeah, they need someone. They need someone to work on it because I think Casey Mertori's been working on it tangentially. I think. Oh, I think Richard Mitton is working on it, and then maybe Jeff's getting involved. I have no idea.
Yeah, I've tried getting like preliminary builds of it, and it's just not ready yet. But yeah, middleware. Like I might have a port soon that is using this Play First SDK. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've never heard of it, and just because I've not heard of it, I'm already terrified of what it might be like.
I'm probably just gonna have to recode it
Yep, that happens sometimes.
because I have the headers, and I think I know what all the functions should do.
Yeah, because like by the time you got to democracy, that because technically Positech uses Erklang, but none of the ports use Erklang.
I noticed that it was not used at all.
He replaced it with OpenAL, a C++ wrapper of OpenAL, and then when I got to GSP2, I'm like, I'm not using any of this. I'm just gonna replace it using the Erklang headers basically.
Yeah, thankfully Erklang is pretty simple.
Yeah, it's just like OpenAL and STB Vorbis, which are much superior libraries to middlewares.
I'm having trouble finding an exact date, but it looks like SpeedTree has had Linux support for a little while.
Maybe.
From what I'm reading, Linux and Mac support was introduced at the same time, with SpeedTree version 6, maybe?
What is it even used for? Is it just used for trees, right?
Trees and vegetation.
During the building process of the editor, or actually at runtime?
Both, I think. So I think it's got the ability for you to use it to graft trees and seed a tree generator, so that you get the same stuff at runtime all the time.
So okay, no trees then.
Yeah, well, you can take trees out. It's cool. I totally gotten distracted looking for this release date. So let's move on before I go too deep down the rabbit hole.
I mean, I like what Unreal is doing a lot.
Yeah, it feels like I don't know. My mind's kind of blown by how much of a change in attitude for the company this has been. It's really cool to see them moving more towards the progressive side of things. So I mean, everybody I think was surprised when they decided to do source releases, and it's kind of nice that it was, I guess, opening up something that was kind of already happening a little bit. I mean, people were already sharing stuff across. Developers who were using Unreal who had contact with each other were sharing bits and pieces here and there. But moving on to general gaming news, looks like GOG have released a few more Linux titles. Siberia 2 Resurrection is amongst them, and I think this one came from Corbin. Sorry if I'm misattributing this, but I think Corbin discovered a link that people can visit which sorts the Linux games by release date. So if anybody's having trouble keeping track of which Linux games are available, then you can totally use that to keep on top of it. So also happening, I don't know when this was released. I'm not sure how recent it is, but there's on Steam and also on the Blender website is a set of video tutorials for people who'd like to make game content, which are well worth checking out. Hero has been messing around with those, and he seems to have been very much enjoying that. I haven't had a chance to get into it myself, but anybody else had a chance to try it or check out the videos? Gonna take that as a no. XCOM 2 was also announced. It should be arriving in November with a Linux port done by Feral. It's hard to know whether or not this is going to be simultaneous. But certainly exciting news for any XCOM fans. There are a few bits and pieces, tidbits that are available. Looks like IGN has exclusivity on most of the new information that comes out, so you gotta wait for that to be drip fed over the next few months. But there's already a few little bits and pieces there to check out. Nice to see Linux on the trailer and prominently visible at the bottom of the website. But any of you guys looking forward to XCOM 2?
I still have to play Enemy Unknown, and I know that that's not entirely the same, so I know very little about XCOM.
It's fun. I enjoyed Enemy Unknown. I never had the opportunity to play the original, so I kind of feel like I'm a bit of a, a noob in hardcore people's territory. But I really enjoyed the gameplay. I thought the ending was a bit lackluster, and the story was a bit, I don't know, just felt like it was concluded poorly. But mechanics and just general gameplay are really cool. Also, on the turn-based strategy front, Massive Chalice was released, which we mentioned a little bit earlier. It's available on Steam and GOG and Humble and everywhere else you can find these sorts of things. As I mentioned, I've been playing it a bit, and Bean, you said you've been playing it a bit as well.
Yeah, I've gone through. I think I'm only like year 59. No, I don't even think I'm year 50 yet. Like year 41 or something like that. But so far enough that I don't really care about any of the people that I send out there to battle. It's like I just need you to spot. Could you now you're bait, and I bait that one. I know it's it. There's no way that particular, and I don't care. You're like, well, I'm just gonna have this one breed 8 children. So whatever. It's interesting. I like the fact that it takes kind of that turn-based strategy, but then also kind of puts in the empire building and defense, and also forces you to take kind of a more long-term view of it because it crosses generations.
Yeah.
And that you have to take like an active player out of your vanguard to seat them somewhere, and it's like, here, well, now I just need you to produce babies. Make me babies.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And you set them down there, but then you have to pair them with somebody else, and then depending on what their particular skills were or what kind of class they were determines also what their offspring may be.
Right.
And then layered on top of that are all these different traits that they have a chance to pass down.
And so when you're making your breeding decisions, I guess, you want to try and minimize the negative attributes and maximize the positive attributes.
And the game does a really good job of making sure that that's almost impossible.
Yeah. There's a quote from the documentary, which we should probably mention the documentary as well. Let me go track it down. Have you seen any of it?
It's too big for me. It's something like massive knowledge. I'm not ready for that. I've seen what that power does to people. I can't have it. But that's just it. It makes it difficult to kind of do this. I'm going to make sure that I get only these traits. 3 generations from now I can have, and because there's so many things that can happen. Like I know that in the second combat that I did, I thought, okay, this guy's getting old. I'm going to retire him after this combat. He didn't make it through that combat, and he had like the best traits of any of my vanguard. I'm like, oh well.
Right.
And then you just realize that, okay, well it's this kind of it's like what George R.R. Martin does in Game of Thrones, and I'm talking about the books more than the series. But you never know who's going to die, and it's just anybody could. So just be prepared.
Right.
And it may be your favorite hero, but they're not going to be your favorite hero, and then they're going to die eventually because that generational aspect forces you to think in those terms.
I think the thing that I really wish that the game did more of was allowing you to become more attached to your peanuts. That's what they are to me. I'm just like, they're all nearsighted, as we said earlier. They're all nearsighted, drunk, puny, weak, clumsy peanuts that
Impressionable.
Yeah. Actually, impressionable is great if you have fantastic attributes.
Really?
I remember Mim was playing a couple of days ago, and she was like,
one day.
Yeah, I got all these perfect bloodlines that have been crafting. They're absolutely perfect. But she was running slightly short on heroes and recruited a bunch of randoms. And one of them had a bad trait. And because everyone was impressionable, they all just soaked up this terrible, terrible trait, which I think was Reveler. So they all just went, oh yeah, you're drunk. This looks like fun. We'll just crack open a few beers on the battlefield, So they all picked up Reveler. That's
beautiful. And see, that's what I really enjoy about that game. And one day I'll get to experience what it's like to have impressionable be a positive thing.
But yeah, it's cool to make some decisions. In the documentary, I was going to say, Brad says something early on, and I can't remember who he's quoting, and I can't remember the quote exactly, but it's something like, you've got to go to war with the armor you have, not with the armor you want. And I kind of like that idea of making the best of what you've got. And the kind of, you do have a handicap because half of your people have a trait like asthmatic, and so they can't run very far. But that in itself, those kinds of restrictions and constraints, they place interesting tactical limitations on you. So you gotta think of other ways to work around problems than you would if you had the perfect
team,
perfect bloodlines.
Sure.
Yeah.
And and I have to say I do appreciate that it kind of throws it at you quickly. It doesn't the first time you have to set somebody to keep, you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't really want to get rid of anybody. And I definitely don't want that guy to reproduce. And
to the Sage Rite Guild with you.
Right, but the very first thing that you build is a keep. You don't have a Sage Rite Guild yet, so I'm still kind of in that first tutorial campaign. And so the first thing you build is a keep. I don't have a Sage Rite Guild to go send them off to, because now that I do, yeah, that's it. Go over there and research things for me, chant a bit, and do what you have to.
Yeah.
So.
I had a run last week or I guess it was this week, where I was trying to do brutal difficulty on Iron Mode, and Iron Mode means that you only have one save, and that's your autosave. So there's no option to load your save if you make a bad decision or something. And I got up to year 230 or something, I think it was, and I made a silly mistake at about 170 years, and it took the rest of the time, another 60 years, for me to be able to finally wind down to the end after that. But I was like, I know it's gonna end, but I'll keep pushing as long as I can. It was like fun towards the end where I just didn't have enough heroes. That was my problem. I didn't have enough heroes to field a full vanguard in a battle, and I had like 3 Shadowjacks, and they were taking down advanced bulwarks and wrinklers and twitchers, and it was kind of fun to have those odds stacked against me and make the best of what I had. And the soundtrack, I love the soundtrack. You dig the music, Bean?
So far.
It's cool. There's not a lot of it, but what there is great. I particularly like the use of backwards instruments in some of the quieter tracks.
That explains the voices I'm hearing. I've always been sensitive to backward tracks. That backward masking thing has always got me, so... Whew.
Alrighty. So Steelstorm Burning Retribution has received some updates in the beta branch.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, I'll admit this, the Steelstorm Burning Retribution event was the very first SteamLUG event I ever attended.
Oh yeah.
And it was I didn't even realize that game had a first-person view, which changes that game dramatically, and then suddenly the ability to switch between those 2 modes becomes essential. Well, essential. This just really blew up all the things.
Yeah.
Well, at least the way I played anyway.
No, but you can't access that until you've finished the first campaign, can you?
Oh, I think you can, because I don't think I ever finished the first campaign. Maybe it was just because we were playing multiplayer.
Yeah, maybe, I'm not sure.
But either way, I think the most exciting thing here is that this game is still getting updates.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that it was kind of under development still. It's kind of nice to see not only just updates to new engine versions, but it also looks like there's a bunch of balancing changes in there as well.
Right, so giving us like more than ample reason to actually revisit that with another event.
Yeah, definitely, it'd be fun. So Humble Bundle have another thing going on. It's they're calling it an Humble Indie Bundle All Stars, which contains a lot of prominent indie games that have been in previous Humble Bundles. So if you don't have these games, there's an opportunity to pick them up. If you do have them, and what an excuse to give any of the developers more money, then feel free. If not, then there's probably not much there for you. And we mentioned earlier that Shadow Warrior 2 looks like it's going to have... Actually, I don't know if we did mention it, but we can mention it now.
Shadow Warrior 2? I don't think we did.
We did? We did, okay.
We didn't. I don't believe we did. Go for it.
Oh, right. We definitely talked about it before the show.
Correct.
And now that Aaron's gone...
now we bring it up. That's awesome planning on our part. We could have moved that to the top.
Yeah, whoops.
Yeah, next time.
So Shadow Warrior 2 has been listed with a Linux system requirements on Steam, so it sort of indicates that they have Linux support planned. Although Aaron did mention before the show that he doesn't know what their Linux plans are, so presumably he's not currently involved with them. But it would be nice to see that here regardless. Hey Flibbit, you want to introduce the next one?
Oh, okay. Since I've been interrupting this podcast for like the entire 2 hours, I may as well help out a little bit here. So I released, in the last 2 weeks, within a 7-day period, I released 3 ports again. Pretty much almost at like the same time last year, actually. So there is They Bleed Pixels, which I think you've mentioned before, because it's been in beta since like May. But that actually went out last week, and they had their own separate sale.
Oh, nice.
But the two that are in focus for the summer sale is Wizorb as well as Wiv and Keep. This may sound odd to some of you because, as many of you would know, especially with Wizorb, because that was in Humble Indie Bundle 6, these have actually had ports before. They actually have Linux Mac versions, and I think they have been for like a couple of years now. But they didn't have Steam versions until this week. And when asking them why, while simultaneously pitching like an FNA version, because I'm thinking, there aren't that many XNA games out there that are looking for ports right now. It's kind of the sad truth of it, even though there are still a lot of XNA games out. And there's like, I think even last week, there's another XNA game out on Steam and it's doing really well. So But you know, when I sort of pitched them like, hey, maybe we can do like an FNA version and maybe put that on Steam. Like I'm thinking like they're already thinking about I'm thinking they've already done their port. They don't really care about it and whatever. But both of them were just like, we love that idea. So they let me do an FNA version of those titles that already were on Monogame. And basically how I did it was I took their Monogame changes, threw them in the dumpster instantly, and then started from this stock XNA4 version that they used for Windows and just made them work with FNA without any real changes. And that was pretty much the case for both titles. I think I changed I did change the save path for WizWords. If you were really irritated by the fact that it made a folder called Tribute Games in your home directory, that's been fixed. So if you just start the game once, it'll copy it to the XDG spec folder, and then you can just dump the home folder. And then Wiv and Keep was another case where I think the saves for cloud saves, I actually had to change some things around. But other than that, I didn't really do anything to either game. So it was something I kind of did for fun in between a gap of time, because there was one project that I was supposed to be working on that it's much like what Aaron was saying earlier. It's done. It just needs to be launched in the right place, so I don't have to do anything there. And then there's a really big project that I've teased before, but unfortunately got canceled. So, well, unfortunately in the sense that it won't show up, but it would have been really crappy if we had shipped it anyway, because it was really messy. So I'm actually really glad that we canceled it. But so not much on the pipeline at the moment. I'm negotiating some things, as I always am, and I'm also considering things like crowdfunding, because that big title was supposed to sort of be the thing that thrust FNA into 1.0, but without that there, I may have to consider things like maybe just like a small Indiegogo thing, like with that one guy who does like the Mesa drivers. Like I think he has like a couple weeks. He just like asked for a couple weeks of time, and people actually did it. So I may do something like that, like right at the end, once I'm absolutely sure that there's no other games that could help fund it. But and this is all really early days. Like I'm just bringing up, oh, maybe I'll do Indiegogo, but I have no sort of market for that. I'd just be like, just do it if you want, as opposed to having some actual purpose for giving it some random dude on the internet money.
Man, astronomy music. Let's do it.
Oh God, don't bring that up.
Now trending. Congratulations.
Oh God. But yeah, it's like So yeah, Wizard and Wind Keep. They're new titles. You should get them. They're really small. They're really cool. They're really cheap, and you know, it's FNA, not monogame, so they'll work.
People might already have Wizard Orb via a Humble Bundle.
Yeah, it was Humble 6, and we actually have the key fixed. Like for the first couple hours that it was out, we didn't have the right like the depot and that special bonus key, but it's been fixed. So if you have Humble Indie Bundle 6, it should download for Linux and it should just work.
Nice.
Yeah, that did finally show up. I was one of those people that was affected to it. Or affected.
Yeah, same here.
Affected. Okay.
I'm assuming basically everybody was affected by it, because that's where everybody got the game from.
Right.
That's kind of sad that, a majority of the Linux player base already has it, so there's not an opportunity to...
That's fine.
I guess.
I mean, as long as people have it. I literally did this port for fun. It was not some business venture for me. It was like, I want the game on Steam, and I know it's XNA4. It will take me an hour, and it did. So, have as much fun playing it as I did sort of porting it, because it didn't take much work. It would have been a speed port candidate, but there were a lot of project files that I had to work on, so just that took like 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
So how much do you play of the games that you end up porting?
In this case, I didn't get very far in it. Live and Keep was one that I actually dug in a little bit. I'm actually going to be saving that to play with someone else, because I really want to play co-op with them, and so I'm going to try and not spoil myself on that. And hopefully it won't crash somewhere later on, and that'd be really sad, but it did go through QA though, so someone did play it, and we know it does work, but it would be sad if that actually happened.
Yeah. Alrighty, so moving on to crowdfunding news. Bean, tell us about the thing.
Bloodstained Ritual of the Night has a Kickstarter. This is I'm not even going to mangle that name. But basically,
Koji Igarashi? Yeah, Koji Igarashi. There you go.
Koji Igarashi?
Mm.
I was wrong. I said I would murder it after all. This is, I guess, basically...
You let me do it first.
Of course.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. This is apparently... I honestly, I have to admit that I am not a Castlevania fan. I mean, that...
It's all good.
Good. Phew. I was like, I'm out of the SteamLUG. Look at that.
It's okay, man. It's okay. Castlevania isn't even on Linux.
Yeah, my gamer card. I got to keep tossing it out because, you know, I keep figuring out all these reasons why I'm not actually a gamer anymore. I'm like, oh, that's cool. All right, well, whatever. There's another one. So either way, though, apparently one of the big things about this was that it was funded like quickly, and not too surprising. I mean, this is a very popular game, and for a lot of people, it is very influential on their design decisions later. There are a lot of games.
Wow, they've made a lot more than what they were asking.
That doesn't surprise me. Now, is there Linux support for this? I have to admit, I haven't looked.
Yes. Yes, PC, Mac, Linux, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Wii U, and PS Vita. So Linux plus some things we don't care about.
Some things you don't care about. Here's the thing: is it needs to be there for the PS4, so that when I eventually get one, I'll have at least something to look forward to. Salt Ender Cactus.
But yeah, they're asking for 500,000, and with 5 hours left to go, they have 5,045,416.
Well, I sure hope that game gets made. I really do.
Yeah, it'd be kind of sad if it didn't.
Actually, at this point, you should just... I hope that game gets made.
Yeah, moving on. Telly, do you know anything about Bard's Tale?
No.
So, In Exile, which is Brian Fargo's company,
Correct.
if I remember right, has secured the rights to make Bard's Tale 4, which is the next sequel in the Bard's Tale trilogy, and will presumably remain a trilogy until October 2017, if they hit their target dates.
Well, looks like they're almost there. They've got, almost a month left.
They're close.
Yeah, they're really close to it. So, I don't know. I am kind of looking forward to this one. I know that if Mr. Ritter were here, had a mic, he'd be here with us. He'd be the one, gushing over this one right now. I mean, I grew up playing The Bard's Tale. And so when that kind of reboot, whatever that was, that came out from In Exile, it didn't click with me. Something about the dialogue and everything was just a kind of a little, I'm not above, I love gutter humor, but there was something in this that was just so juvenile, I just couldn't even get into the rest of the gameplay. So I'm looking forward to something that kind of throws it back. And not only that, it felt a lot more kind of point and click adventure-y, whereas the earlier ones had really been kind of RPGs. So it'll be interesting to see where this one goes.
Yeah. I would say I never played them, never really got into them. Same kind of thing. They did seem to be a bit, I don't know, puerile? Is that the right word, I guess?
Yeah, I think it is. And
it feels like it describes them.
And I'm not above that, but it just didn't click with me.
Yeah, it didn't grab me.
Alrighty then.
But yeah, horses for courses. Yeah.
So Perception is another game. Looks to be a horror game made from the developers of BioShock and Dead Space. And the real key thing here is that you're blind, and so the idea is it's going to play off a lot of kind of sonar kind of effects to show you the space around you and what's coming. So sound will play a big piece of it. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that, because I know that especially in the first Dead Space, there are some elements there's some things that were done so well in kind of reducing what felt like your available space to escape if something should happen. Because the first Dead Space, anyway, felt like the pacing was right, that you kind of always expected something to come at you, but it didn't always do that. So you're kind of always on edge. So I'm kind of looking forward to hoping that this kind of does the exact same thing, and by removing the ability to actually just look around you and see things, to see how that kind of changes things.
It's been nice to see a bunch of games being crowdfunded which try and explore the experience of being blind. And as Corbin mentions in chat, this game does happen to position Linux and Mac support as a stretch goal.
That's the thing
which is disappointing to see.
And there's still 12 days. You can work some magic cheese, convince them that it's a bad idea.
No, I could send him a message.
Yeah.
I'll leave the tab open and put it on my to-do list.
But here's the thing: is if it does hit that goal, though, I'd be looking forward to that one, seeing what they're going to do with it. And it's being built on Unreal Engine 4, so that means that
I kind of hope that they do it anyway.
It was, yeah, but I like the idea that they're putting tools in place that make it easier for them.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. There have been plenty of crowdfunding campaigns. One called Convoy that I was interested in checking out. Didn't promise Linux to begin with, but it seems to be here now, so it's great. What else did we have on here? Power Drive 2000, something I mentioned a couple of casts ago, was successfully funded. It was so close, so very, very close. Right up to the last second. Came in, I think, $2,000 over its target. So if anybody was excited about a car, very retro future 80s style sci-fi car racing game, then totally keep an eye on that.
If you're ever jealous of the Hoff's car, here's your chance.
Yeah. If you want to be the Hoff, here's your chance.
Is that possible? Can any of us be the Hoff?
We can try. Every time I get a burger, I lie down on the floor in the lounge room. Dear me. But yeah, sort of definitely inspired by Knight Rider there with the talking car. I played the it had a demo which I was able to get working in Wine, and the aesthetic it feels really cool.
All right, so should we wrap it up then?
I think we should, unless anybody had anything else they wanted to bring up. Tilly, you've been quiet. Any pearls of wisdom you want to share with us?
No.
Again, I appreciate your honesty.
Oh, actually, Tilly, could you do us a favor? I don't know if we'll cut this out or if we'll use it, but can you say "and Flibbit"? And when you do Flibbit, can you say "hi"?
And surprise guest, Flibbit.
I am here because, well, I'm here.
Welcome. So we can cut that in at the beginning if whoever does the audio edit is excited, so it'll make it sound like you were meant to be here all along.
Yeah, sure.
It's good like that. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for joining us. It has been fun. And this has been another episode of SteamLUG Cast.
As always, feel free to send us feedback at cast@steamlug.org.
You can find us on IRC at irc.freenode.net, #SteamLUG.
And you can tweet to us at SteamLUG. You can find us on the Google Plusticles, which is like googleplus.com/SteamLUG.
And YouTube, we're also on the YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. We're also there too.
Yeah. Hooray! Thank you very much for listening. It's been wonderful to have you as listeners.
Bye.
Tilly, that was beautiful. I wasn't seriously expecting you to do that.
That's usually the part we have to fight over,
3 cheers. I feel I can't speak today. You've got quadrilateral. I can't talk today.
You're talking fine. It's just it's a tricky word, quadrilateral.
So on that note, wow.
You got this.
Wow. I got this. I can do this. Wait, that's not the right thing. Nobody read that. Read those instead.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was entirely coincidental.
Uh-huh.
So,
It's
that's how we should open every show. All right.
Hashtag.
I was about to say.
Hashtag.
Hey, look, man.
Pound.
I called it pound and got
Pound friend.
I called it pound and got ridiculed. So, Octothorpe, we're done. Moving.
Octothorpe.
How about we just say we're
I like
in this?
that. Octothorpe SteamLUG.
Yep.
Tic-tac-toe, SteamLUG.
Italicized tic-tac-toe.
Should I do it over?
Drunk tic-tac-toe.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Sorry.
Come see
you
us
can also-
on IRC on irc.freenode.net. Tic-tac-toe board, SteamLUG.
We're so using that take.
Yeah, you sure you want to leave plusticles in there?
Yeah, man.
Plusticles.
I don't know. Isn't that what people say?
Or plusticles if you want to be Greek.
Yeah, that's the Greek social networking. I got Norbert sick of our shit. He just pisses straight off.
So here's a potential name for this episode. Your cast is too long. I want my money back. I want a refund.
Your
I
cast
want
is
a
2
refund.
hours and I want my... No, your cast is 2 hours and I want my money back. I guarantee you there's 28 minutes of stuff to cut.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing. We gotta make sure that it's over 2 hours, and that way no one can get their refund, and we can live in our filthy, non-refunded money.
2 hours and 2 minutes later.
Thank God Corbin's
Oh,
got this
dear.
part on tape too.
Yeah.
Hey, I have to say I appreciate that you said on tape.
Tape.
Oh, well, yeah. When I do like recording, like when we're always in studio, we always think
It's
that it's
tape.
tape.
Yeah, it's awesome.